Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. About to go live on TalkSport 2 with the brilliant Shaban Ahern. As you can see, I'm in the studio. But I wanted to pop on and give you guys a little bit of bonus content around Albert Sambi Lokonga, who's been the subject of lots of debate following the latest in a bit of a series, I guess, of underwhelming performances. Now, look, when Lokonga joined the club, we all had massively high hopes for him. We paid something around 15, 16 million pounds sterling to bring him to the club. He had a huge reputation in Belgian football. He was playing excellently. He was the captain of his club at a really young age. And a lot of people thought that this guy was going to go on and achieve really big things. And I'm not saying that he won't, right? I'm not saying that he won't. But the more I watch of him, the more I am struggling to understand where he fits in at Arsenal. And the more I'm starting to question whether or not he has what it takes, the minerals, in not just in terms of mentality, but in terms of ability, in terms of capability, in terms of physicality. Does he have all of the components that he needs to go on and establish himself as a regular in the Arsenal first team? I've repeatedly kind of compared him to Thomas Partey, and perhaps that's a little bit unfair. Perhaps Albert Sambi Lokonga doesn't see himself as the next Thomas Partey. Maybe he feels that he's better in a more advanced role. Maybe he feels that when he plays sort of further up the pitch, he's somewhere closer to his best. And that's all fair. But right now we need him in that deep line midfield position. And we need someone to backfill for Thomas Partey, given his fitness concerns and given the fact that the man is simply not a machine. He can't play every single game. And we've seen how many times he's broken down in recent seasons. And that, you know, is cause for concern. So Arsenal need to wrap him up in cotton wool, but we need somebody who can come in and do that role to a relatively high standard and fill in for him in games like the game last night. Now, I'm not saying, that I expect Lokonga to turn up and be at Thomas Partey's level. I think the amount of central midfielders on Thomas Partey's level in the world right now, I think you can count them on one hand. I genuinely do. I think he's that good. I think he's transformative. I think he's so good at protecting the back line, not just because he's strong in the challenge and he's physical and he's got that great reach, but because also his football brain is right up there. He sees things developing before they do. He cuts out passing lanes. His vision as well when he's on the ball allows Arsenal to break lines and get forward much, much quicker. There's less of those sideways passes. There's more progression in his play. And that really helps because when you can work the ball into the likes of Odegaard, who can receive it on the turn, or Xhaka on the other side to get moves going, that really helps Arsenal in terms of their intensity, in terms of their tempo of play. And as a result, you've got a much better team in front of you. And this is the thing right now, right? So when Lokonga plays, it feels a little bit pedestrian. It feels a little bit slow. He just sometimes, in my opinion, takes that extra touch. I think he's careless with the ball sometimes in that his touches can be a little bit loose. He shows a little bit too much to the opponent in the same way that maybe Jack Wilshere did at times as well. And that leads to players putting in crunching tackles. And then you've got to question whether Lokonga is up for that, whether he's willing to get involved in that side of the game, whether he can live up to the physical standards that are required and demanded if you want to thrive and really put your stamp on the Premier League. So, look, I'm a little bit frustrated by him at this moment in time because, as I say, I think there is more ability in the player than what we're seeing. And, I went back earlier today and listened to what I was saying about Lokonga when we signed him. And I talked about a really confident player who would pick up the ball, would turn, would carry it, would dribble, would line break with his passes, was happy to ping a shot from distance. And I just wonder right now if the lack of confidence that he's clearly suffering from has led to him sort of going back into his shell and his game has become much more simplified as a result of that. But how do we get that confidence back into Lokonga? Because I'm not ready to give up on this player yet. I think there is talent. I think there is ability. I think he's got potential. But he's not young anymore by 2022 standards. So I think we need to find a way pretty quickly of extracting the best once again from Sambi Lokonga, or think about moving him on or replacing him. That's kind of where I'm at this stage. And I don't want to do this. I don't want to be the guy that jumps on and slams an Arsenal player. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just trying to figure out in my own mind, and I'm kind of thinking out loud on this video as to how we can get the best out of Lokonga. I think the time has come now to accept and acknowledge and understand that whilst he's probably our best option for that role right now, given how well Xhaka's playing in a more advanced role and given the fact that Mohamed Elneny's injured. I think we have to accept that the 6, the deep-lying midfield position that Thomas Partey plays, which is a very specific role, a very demanding role because you're the only protection for the back line, essentially, in a lot of instances. I think we have to accept that that position is not Lokonga's best. And so do we have to then temper our reaction to his performances on that premise, knowing that actually the best of him is yet to come? Well, when Elneny returns, if we can get someone in the January window, which I think is imperative now when you look at the drop-off in performances recently, then we can start to look at Lokonga with fresh eyes, in a fresh light. I think that's the way to do it. I think we've got to kind of compartmentalise what we've seen of Lokonga so far, look at it all in detail, sort of come to our conclusions. My conclusion is that he's not a number 6, and so we restart when the opportunity comes to give him game time in another area. But that requires Arsenal to go out and do additional business. That requires Arsenal to bring someone else in who can play that role, because unfortunately for Lokonga, he's been pushed into a position that I have to admit, initially I thought would be his position going forward, but clearly isn't somewhere that he thrives. And so I would give him one more chance, as I say, in that more advanced midfield role, and we'll take it from there and we'll see how it goes. But does he need a loan? I've seen a lot of talk about that. Is that the right solution? Is that what we should be looking to do with Sambi Lokonga? Is it time to move him somewhere where he can play in a role closer to the one that he actually wants to play in, closer to the one in which he feels most comfortable, and then maybe we'll see the best of him. Maybe that confidence that I've talked about will return, and as a result, when you've got confidence as a footballer, you will have the cojones, shall we say, to try something a little bit more ballsy. You will be more eager to play those line-breaking passes. You'll back yourself to be able to do that without giving possession away cheaply. So I think, it's one of those where we're kind of stuck in a really difficult position with Lokonga. What's his best position? For me, I don't even know that it's 100% as an 8, because I haven't seen enough of that yet, and I'm kind of assuming and hoping. But what I do know now, having watched him at length for quite a while, is that he's definitely not a 6. That's my conclusion. So I can't tell you exactly what his best position is and will be and should be going forward, but I can categorically tell you that he's not a 6. And I feel like we're kind of hanging him out to dry at the moment. And I think as fans, we've got a responsibility to look at this and, and be accepting of the circumstances that are leading to Lokonga's performances being so poor. And ultimately, if Elneny was around, he wouldn't be playing this role, and we'd be able to use him in more advanced positions, hopefully where he'd be able to thrive. So, yeah, I'm kind of hitting the pause button in terms of the Lokonga in or out talk. Let's see how he fares when we can give him a slightly more advanced role, and then we go from there. But there are factors as well that are causing Arsenal fans to feel frustrated with Lokonga, that are causing Arsenal fans to really kind of pile on him, because, look, for one, the way he carries himself, and we talk about this a lot with footballers, and he's not the first and he won't be the last who has that kind of languid, lazy looking style. That's not to say he's lazy, covers plenty of ground, etc., etc. But he does have that body language that I think frustrates a lot of people, and that fuels some of the criticism. I think defensively, he's got to be more aware. He's got to understand the danger around him, and that has to be first and foremost at the front of his mind. Now, that's difficult for a player who, as I say, probably wants to play in a more advanced role, because your instinct is to focus on the attacking game, and maybe those defensive instincts haven't necessarily been drilled into you or trained into you. But it requires a lot more concentration from Lokonga on the defensive side so that he can limit the danger that opponents are causing us in between the lines. Take the game against PSV last night. The amount of times that they broke into that space between the last line of midfield and defence was scary. And when Thomas Partey's in the side, that simply doesn't happen anywhere near as frequently. And he's one man alone as well. But why? Because his first thought, his priority when we're without the ball is to get back into that defensive hole. And I think Lokonga's a little bit slow in recognising danger and therefore positioning himself to deal with it, snuff it out, to put out the fires. So it could be, an adaptation. It could be something that he is struggling to adapt to in terms of the mentality, in terms of your instinct. Your instinct has to be defensive in that position first and foremost. And if you can add the other stuff, great. You know, Mohamed Elneny is a good example of that, right? His defensive instinct, I don't think should be questioned. But what should be questioned is that, the fact that he can't progress the ball and he can't do all of that. So we've got kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum, and we're asking one of them to backfill a player that's got it all. So the standard is always going to drop off. But look, what became really clear and really evident last night, and has been evident for a while, I think a lot of people refused to accept it until last night, is that Arsenal lack the strength in depth to be able to make so many changes against any half-decent opponents. You know, we've had a relatively easy Europa League group. You know, we played Bodo Glimt, we played Zurich, we play Zurich again, hopefully to win the group next Thursday. PSV was always going to be the toughest test. PSV away proved a very difficult test and proved to be a game that we simply couldn't manage to get through and couldn't see out with the changes that had been made. So, yeah, the strength and depth thing is valid. The drop-off point that we've been making all season is valid, of course. I don't really want to stick the boot in on Sambi Lokonga, but what I will say to you is I don't know 100% what his best position is. I don't know if he has a future at Arsenal. I don't know where he fits in to Mikel Arteta's team and system. But what I can definitely tell you now, and what I definitely know, is that he is not the six that we are hoping is going to step up and provide cover for Thomas Partey moving forward. And if we keep labelling him as that, and we keep putting him in that situation, his career is going to nosedive really, really badly, because with every passing week when he's criticised because he can't fill those very big boots left by Thomas Partey, his confidence takes a battering, it takes a beating. And as a young player whose best attributes are what he can do with the ball at his feet and the things that require that bit of confidence, that bit of flair, that bit of self-belief, you're essentially taken away from those things, and he ends up becoming a shadow of himself. And you really don't want that. We invested a lot of money in this guy, and I think Arsenal have a duty of care to try and manage him in the right way and hopefully get the best out of him. He won't be the first player that we sign for decent money that didn't make it, if that is indeed to be the case. But I still am not quite ready to give up on Sambi Lokonga. But I'm certain now in my own mind that he isn't the six that we're wanting. He isn't the six that we're looking for. And action needs to be taken in January to plug not just that hole, but a couple of holes in this squad. If Arsenal are going to maintain a challenge for the top four, and if Arsenal are going to go to the very late stages of this season's Europa League. Let me know your thoughts on Sambi Lokonga. I keep hearing people say send him out on loan. We can't, because we don't have alternatives. So maybe in the future, if we get those additions in, we can look at that, and we can look at that as a way of rebuilding his confidence and getting him back to the level that we all think he can reach. But as things stand right now, it's simply not feasible. He needs to stay at Arsenal. He needs to stay in the squad. He needs to help us out. But we've got to find a way of managing him better in the meantime and in the process, so that we don't completely destroy a player who's undoubtedly talented. Let me know what you think in the comments. Leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. Thank you so much. We'll be back with a full-length episode tomorrow morning. A look ahead to Arsenal's clash with Nottingham Forest. Cheers.